always going to be perfect. Well, good afternoon, everyone. Good to see you all here. Oh, hello. Well done, Ali. Yes. Good, man. I can see a few. I know it's towards the end of the afternoon here, but this is going to be the best bit of time. Sorry, Sheridan's sitting in a row here. He's just done a seminar. This is going to be the best seminar in the afternoon. Sorry, Sheridan. This is going to be good. My name's Paul Gander, and I'm pastor of Wantage Community Church, and I'm lead evangelist, really, for encouraging evangelism in the area with Mark and Catherine, and wanting to continue to encourage everybody to be talking Jesus and sharing Jesus with people and with those around them in whatever context they might find them in. I'm a fan of Rachel. I was the person who was watching the presentation they did live in April, there at my desk, eagerly listening to all the information that's coming out and the wonderful research that they're doing, but also all the other initiatives that want to encourage us to do. So it's great to have Rachel here. She's made it through the ferries and trains and made it here to Oxford. So we're really delighted to have you with us. Thank you for persevering and making it here. I'm going to hand over to Rachel because she's got some great stuff to share. And
thanks so much, Paul. Yeah, been a bit of an adventure. There you are, it's all right. It was fun on the Isle of Wight until the ferry stopped working. Right, but I live in London. I don't live on the Isle of Wight. So I live in London. I'm married to a vicar in the Church of England. We're part of the HTB network, and we're church planters in East London. So that helps you know that I know your world a bit. It's slightly different, probably. We have a big 300-year-old building, which makes it a bit different. But other than that, probably not much. People are people. So that's what I get up to in my spare time. And in my day job, I am the executive director of an organisation called Hope Together. And we want everyone everywhere to know Jesus. It's as simple as that. So that's what I'm passionate about. I'm passionate for evangelism and for mission. Now, part of that is this research called Talking Jesus. We first did this in 2015, and some of you might have seen it then. That's when I was at that point working for the Church of England. I was their National Mission Evangelism Advisor, and we were going to pull together with Hope and the EA, a group of denominational leaders, and we were going to look at evangelism. And I was like, yeah, but you know what we're going to do? We're all going to get together, and we're going to share our anecdotes, and then we're going to make strategy from them, like the person I met on the train or the person I met on the bus. Because there just isn't any good data right across the whole. And I said, I really want to know. If I was the head of Boots' marketing department, on a Monday morning, I would have all the shop figures for that weekend. I'd know who'd been in, what they'd purchased, what were my lead products, what people felt about Boots, how many people had gone to Superdrug and who'd gone to Savers. But I worked for the Church of England at the time, and I had no data apart from a year later, the October accounts. And they weren't that helpful a year later. So it was like, surely, and again, they only talked about the people inside. They didn't tell me anything about the people outside. So I was like, I really need to know about the people outside. So I persuaded the then team that we needed to do some research before we had this conference. We then had the conference. We shared the research. Nobody believed it, so we had to go and do the research again. Then they began to believe it, and then we promised that we would do it again in like 2022. No, 2020. Then a pandemic came along, and so we did it in 2022. But the big focus is about people outside of the church. We did the research with a company called Savanta. They're a really fantastic group. They do research for the government or for the NHS or for the BBC. So they're not a Christian organisation, but we worked with them to do the polling. We looked at 4,000 UK adults. I mean, if you're someone who does stats, a solid sample would be around 1,000, but this gives us more room, particularly if we want to look regionally to see what's happening. We did it as we came out of the pandemic at the beginning of 2022. And it's a nationally representative sample. That means there's enough people from each region to make it like a solid, when I say this is what's happening in the UK, it's like the UK soup. You know, you need this amount of tomato puree for your soup, this number of sliced carrots, and that represents the whole. So people from the northeast, people from the south, people from London, and then different ethnicities, different gender, so that it's weighted by different age, so that you get a whole soup. And then some things, if it's significant by one of those, I'll shout and tell you that it's particularly significant. So, and the big thing is to find out what's happening in the UK. So who here read the census data? A few of you got into the census data and went, oh, and you probably saw the headlines and the fact that, we were, for the first time, under 50% of people in the country who tick Christian. It wasn't a surprise to us because we'd got 48% in sort of Jan-Feb, so we're very similar to the census. So we know that something's happening. If you read the newspapers and scroll through your social media, you think it's all doom and gloom and it's over for the church whenever we see these figures. But actually, they're not actually a measure of the people in your church on Sunday, are they? We don't have about 48 or between 46 and 48% of the population in any of our churches on any given Sunday. So it's obviously measuring something different. And then I'll tell you what we've done to give us something a bit more accurate. The other interesting things in this is you can see that the people of Muslim faith there's not that many still in our country. It's about 4%. And then the other faiths are all actually very small. Again, if you looked at perhaps media representation, we're often depicted as very equal, all the faiths in a very equal way. But actually, if you like, the population weight is not equal for those groups. And also they come into play in different places. So in London, they come much more into play than they might do where you are regionally. They might not come into play as much. You may not have as many people of different faiths. The big rising thing is none of the above, which again was probably picked out in the census. The people for whom a question about faith or religion is just like, nah, I don't even know what you're kind of like. You're just asking me something I just don't know, I'm not interested in. It's like a kind of a neutral. If you are really interested in the people who say none of the above, which is a rising term in younger generations, the Theos have done a really good report of it. And they split it up into thirds. A third of that group are spiritual. So none of the above does not mean not spiritual. So they're not saying no to concepts of spirituality. They're saying no to organised religion. So that's quite an important distinction. The older you go in the population, the more Christian you will have, cultural Christians. And the younger you go, the less cultural Christians you will have. And the younger you go, you will get more people who are like, Muslim as well. The Muslim population rises the younger you go. So if you like, the younger generation, 18 to 24-year-olds, are living in a very different world of faith to those who are over 65. I mean, I know you know that, but sometimes we just need to kind of look at the world, whichever world we're working in, we need to really do some homework on what that world looks like. And also regionally, if you're in different parts of the country, Oxford would be different to maybe Bristol, or do you know what I mean? Or a village situation. If you're in a small market town, the makeup of that small market town will be very different to a big city, which should change the way that we're working and what we're thinking about what we're doing. So we know that big figure's dropping. We know those people aren't with us on Sunday. So how big is the active, practicing Christian church in this country? Because that's the team for mission and evangelism. That's the figure I'm interested in. Is that going up or down? Because that's the one that matters, isn't it? So to measure that, what we did is we asked people whether or not they attended church regularly. I don't know why, but regular's now once a month. When I was growing up in the Brethren, I went 5 times on a Sunday and 3 times in the week, and that was regular. So standards are slipping. But anyway, so regular is now once a month. So these are people who attend a worshipping community at least once a month. They are people who are praying and reading their Bibles at least weekly. And that's a 6% segment of the UK population. Now, you might go, oh, that's a massive drop. But these are the actives. These are the people who are really with us. This has held steady through the pandemic. That's partly because they've got solid spiritual practices. So another piece of research that we did showed that the people who stayed with us through the pandemic were the people who were reading their Bibles and praying. If you have habits of daily and weekly habits of spiritual habits, basic, wonderful Christian habits, people survived the pandemic. The people who didn't have those habits are the ones that wobbled, and we lost some of them. So that's exciting, because this group is not in decline. Because we did this in 2015, we've done it in 2022, and this is solid. So the church, the active church, is not in decline. Cultural Christianity is in decline. The active church is not in decline. That's a really important difference for us. The other exciting thing about this bracket is there is no missing generation in this group. So when you look at practicing Christians, the practicing Christians are equal to their weight in the size of the population. So there are as many people, say, of 35 to 45 who are practicing Christians as there are of 35 to 40-year-olds in the population per segment. We have an ageing population as a whole in the UK, which is a new dynamic. So we're not having as many children born in our country, so that's ageing our population, and that changes this a bit. But we don't have a missing generation in the church. So that's really exciting news, and that hasn't dropped. From 2015 to 2022, we haven't dropped that group. So 2 really important myths we've just busted. The church is not in decline, and there is no missing generation. Yay! And that's really important for us because it gives us a strong sense of who the team is and what's happening in the church. The other important thing to note is that the non-white ethnic contribution to the practicing Christians is a really huge blessing for us. And this will come into play depending on where you live. In London, where I am, that comes into play massively because we are ethnically diverse and our church is ethnically diverse. Where I was just now on the Isle of Wight, that doesn't come into play to such a great extent because if you look at their population figures, their population is not as ethnically diverse. But the overall gift to the church in the UK, there is this enormous army that are really helping us to hold steady with our number of practicing Christians. And we need to work together and work across and work in unity with our brothers and sisters, particularly across the ethnic divide in this country. Right, now looking at the people outside the church. So we've got a solid team, people. It's a good team, it's solid, it's holding up, it's across the ages. What do people outside, well, actually the whole population, think about whether Jesus was a real historical person? Oh, done 2. So about 54% of the population think Jesus was a real historical person who lived on, worked on earth. And about 28% think he's mythical or fictional, a bit more like Gandalf. Now, there's something interesting there, isn't there? Because you're like, well, what's going on? So when we perhaps go into schools and talk about the story of Jesus, we might need to talk about the life events of a historical person called Jesus. Because story does not tell you that he's a true historical person. So there's something here about adding weight to the historicity of Jesus. Because then people have to make a decision as to whether or not he's who he says he is or who he isn't. But if he's like Gandalf, it doesn't really matter what you think. Do you see? So if he's a real person. And we've started to talk much more solidly with our Gospels about calling this an eyewitness account of the life of Jesus. When we give these out in church, we talk about this as the eyewitness historical account of somebody who lived and walked on earth called Jesus. And we'd love you to read it and make up your mind as to what you think about him. Because it just gives it weight. If you say it's the story of Jesus, it could be misinterpreted. We know what we mean, but somebody might not know what we mean. Great. What do people think about Jesus? This is really important. When I say Jesus to someone, I'm a follower of Jesus, what's their likely thought back? Again, remember, we're not a company, but imagine I was the head of Boots. I'd want to say to somebody, what do you think about Boots? And I'd want to know what their response was. Does that make sense? Because it's really important when we're trying to engage people to follow Jesus. Well, Jesus comes out fantastically well as peaceful, spiritual, wise, a leader, loving. He has a really good reputation. Way! And that's so positive for us. That means that when we're talking about Jesus to people, they're starting from a positive place with him. They've got him down most definitely in the kind of spiritual category, haven't they? Peaceful, loving, spiritual Jesus. But I can deal with that. That's a really positive space. They haven't got him in that negative space. They've got a positive view. They're imagining when I talk about Jesus, they think about him in a positive way, which is really helpful. Okay, next one up. Chat to the person next to you. What do people in the UK think about the resurrection of Jesus? How many people in the population in the UK think Jesus rose from the dead? Okay, ready for the big reveal? So, you need to read the top two. Number one, 16% think Jesus rose from the dead word for word as described in the Bible. That's a pretty good start, but have a little look at number two. 29% say that they believe that Jesus rose from the dead, but some of the content in the Bible shouldn't be taken literally. Who are they? Wouldn't you love a cup of tea with one of them? What a cracking conversation I could have. Tell me which bits you don't... What do you think? Only 41% were outright no's. Which way is the weight going in the UK population for Jesus rising from the dead? In a scientific, rational day, the weight is on Jesus rising from the dead. The weight is not on him not rising from the dead. Is that not utterly jaw-dropping? Yes. It's jaw-dropping. When we first did it, people didn't believe it, so we had to do it again, which is this is one of the ones we had to do again. Now, you'll absolutely love this. In 2017, the BBC wanted a headline on Easter Sunday, and it was going to read, "More people believe in reincarnation than resurrection, no longer Christian Britain." That's what they wanted. So they went to a polling company, a research company called Savanta Comres to help them. And they said, "Have you got any questions that might help?" And they said, "Yeah, we could rerun this question. We've done one on the resurrection. We can do some on reincarnation." Well, they got this stat, didn't they? It doesn't really work with a headline that it's no longer Christian Britain and nobody believes in the resurrection, does it? But don't you worry, what they did is, you remember those lovely people who ticked Christian? They worked out what percentage of the people who ticked Christian also ticked, "I do not believe in the resurrection." And that is the headline they ran. It was about 13%. 13% of Christians don't believe in the resurrection of Jesus. Is it over for the church? Well, what did that do for us? Not a lot. So I went on the local radio stations, and I'd say, "Hello, yes," and they go, "Da, da, da, da." I go, "Well, that's very interesting, but did you know that 44, it's down 45, 44% of the UK population believe in the resurrection of Jesus from the dead?" And they're like, "Well, where did you get that from? That's crazy." I said, "Your research." Anyway, we went on like this, radio station for radio station to radio station, with them going, "It can't be true." I said, "Well, if that's not true, none of your research is true. If your research is true, this is true." It was a cracking hour or so of my life. Because I was so passionate that they had yet again misrepresented the truth. And then I began to realize something was happening, that the people in our churches have this earpiece in, and it's a direct connection. It's connected to the BBC, it's connected to their social media, it's connected to what they scroll through, it's connected to YouTube, and the people who are controlling the thought, which then controls our confidence for mission evangelism, they don't love Jesus. They really don't love Jesus, people. So they want us to lose our confidence. They're never going to print a headline, 44% or 45% of the UK population believe in the resurrection of Jesus. They're never going to do that. So they didn't. So they just told us something negative, and we all slumped a little bit further down in our chairs and lost our confidence to talk about the resurrection of Jesus. Instead of going out to find, I want to meet those 29%, don't you? I'm desperate to meet them. I want them to understand that if they've got some concept of resurrection, it's true for their life now and it's true for eternity and forever. I think a lot of those people are hoping for something, but they don't know what it is. A lot of them rock up to different churches at Easter. People try to convince them Jesus rose from the dead. They got that far. They go home. We haven't got much further. We go around in a loop. So we need to reclaim Easter, people. It is our festival. I know Christmas is, but we need to reclaim Easter. So as part of Hope 23-24, which is our year of mission, we want to make Easter 24 as big as we can with whoever will join us. We want to meet those people in Easter 2024 and tell them that Jesus did rise from the dead and he rose from the dead for them, and that he can transform their life now and he will continue to do so, and they can have a concrete hope of eternity. And we need to talk about eternity. And it's not that I think it's wonderful that we are so good at serving everybody, but I feel like we've dialed down when it comes to evangelism because we're so worried about offending people. And yet there's a whole pile of people out there with a whole pile of questions that we're not answering. It's like a bit of a kind of British standoff, really. So we desperately need to reclaim Easter. So we're thinking we've got this Alive thing coming in Easter 24. We want to get as many people and as many churches involved as possible so that we make noise, so that everybody in the UK who wants to find out about the resurrected Jesus could find out about him. Because they need to know how to or where to. And we'll look at a little bit of that coming up. Great. So that's what I'm excited about. Easter. What more about those outside the church? Where would you go if you wanted to find out about which was the best holiday destination to go on this summer? Where would you go to find out the times of the ferries from the Isle of Wight? Where would you go to find about the weather tomorrow? Where would you go to find out about a restaurant you were going to eat in? So when we asked non-Christians, where would you go to find out about the Christian faith? What did they say? It's so straightforward. The number one place where non-Christians would go to find the answers to these questions is on Google. The number two is YouTube. The 18 to 24-year-olds were all on YouTube. Everybody else was on Google. So we need both platforms. Don't ignore YouTube, but find a 14-year-old to work out how we might do that job. And they'll do it for us with great ease. But that's the honest truth. We need to be in those spaces. Now, when the pandemic hit, the church did the biggest missionary movement it's ever done in years and years. Can you imagine how many seminars we'd have had to have done to say, I really think you should go online as a church? Then the pandemic came along and people could do nothing but go online. The craziest groups of churches managed to somehow switch and go online. And we crashed Zoom, didn't we, one week? And it was amazing. We went online. And what happened was people found us. Like hundreds and hundreds and thousands of UK people found us because we went online. Probably 4% of the UK population found us online and came and joined the church as a result. We probably lost about 4% and gained about 4%. But we wouldn't have seen that if we hadn't looked at the figures. And that is a massive missionary movement that we could not have done in any other way. But the temptation now is to switch off and retreat. Because when I can see you and you're in the room with me, I feel, probably because of my age, I feel I've got a connection with you. But I've got to get over that. I have got to get over that and realize the power of the internet to connect. And we have got to inhabit that space. If we don't, someone else is going to. So, we've got to inhabit it. So as a network, how easy is it for people to find your churches, know what you have on offer, know what you think about things? Understand what you believe about Jesus and the resurrection? Or is it easy for someone to find that, or would they just actually go away not having a clue? Because that's where we need to be, and we need to work on that together as churches in the UK. We need to make sure that we're inhabiting that space and place. Okay, Rachel's internet thing over. And I'm not a digital native. I struggle, but I know we've got to be there. So we've got to release the digital natives. We've got to give them everything they want, everything that they need. We've got to support them, get behind them, and get them to inhabit that space for us. Great. Going to a local church, though, is fabulous. At 22%, it comes out really strongly. So you'll be pleased to know local churches are still places that people would think to go to. We find that. We've got a rather classical bit. People just walk in the doors. And then I love this one. Look at that. Reading the Bible. Now, I just love this. This is what happened when we first did the Talking Jesus research. The Bible just keeps on knocking it out of the park for evangelism. Now, when we're looking for a new trick, and God's like, what are you doing? I gave it to you. When you read the Bible, what happens to you? God speaks to you. Your life is transformed. It shapes you. It changes you. God works by the power of his Spirit every time you open the Word. Why wouldn't that happen when a non-Christian opens it? Of course it happens. So that's why I have become so ridiculously committed to getting the Word of God into people's hands in a language that they can read and understand. And you're like, well, we give it out in English. Language is design for certain generations. If you hand them something that looks naff and is cheap, they're going to think that you don't care about it and it is of no value. So we've, hang on. We've produced these that are just beautifully designed. We've got Mark and Luke, and we sell them at print cost because we'd like to fill the UK with something that people might pick up. And then to go with those, I've got no Lukes left because there was a bit of a stampede where I was in, they all disappeared. And then we have like postcards. If you can't leave those, you leave a postcard because there's a digital version online. So people can scan the QR code and then read it. These are good for your pocket. I find these are quite good to give people on trains when I've had a conversation with them and things like that because they can just find it. Why? Because I'm absolutely convinced that if people will read the life of Jesus for themselves, they will not remain unchanged. And so there was a lovely lady who wrote in, She said she put some of these in her church porch. I call this the non-scary evangelism. She put some in her church porch. A guy went to the church porch, picked one up, took it away, read it, and came back to the church to ask them about this man, Jesus, who was in the book. And he started to go to their church. And she said he'd never have picked it up if it hadn't looked like that. And we'd have never had him. He'd never have joined the church if he hadn't have picked it up. And I'm like, how difficult is that? I mean, where can you leave some? Surely if we all left them in all different places, people would sort of keep falling across them and eventually open them up and read them. We could litter the UK with the life of Jesus until everybody's got a copy. YWAM found when they did the doors in London, I think it was 4 out of 10 homes wanted a Bible. 4 out of 10 homes wanted a Bible. And when they did research that helped us to create this, which was how we worked out that we really needed to concentrate on the design, they were standing on the streets. Jan was like, it was so naff, Rachel. It looked like a book table with a tablecloth, and we were asking people questions about the Bible. But people were interested, and they came, and they chatted, and they were reading it all. And I'd chucked a final question on there, which was, would you read the Bible with someone? And he said, we were inundated. We had to stop. There was too many people who wanted to read the Bible, and there wasn't enough Christians to read the Bible with them. You're like, that's the kind of problem we want, isn't it? But strangely enough, we sometimes just can't solve it. So you're like, Jan, I think that's the kind of problem we want. But it's quite easy. We could set up a table and chat to people about the Bible and see if they want to read the Bible with us. So that's something we really want to trial to do because we've got a really good footfall where we are. But where could we trial it? I mean, what's the worst that could possibly happen if I did that? A few people might walk past and think, I wonder what they're doing. But in London, people do much weirder things than that. So, what is the worst that could happen to us? But if 3 people signed up and wanted to read the Bible with me, how exciting would that be? Anyway, I'm sorry, I'm wittering. I probably need to plough on. Great. So we've got some things where they would look. It's always good to put something where people think they might look, because they might find it. We have a habit of putting things where people won't look. So it's always good to ask them, where would you go? Right, well, I'll make sure that you can find things where you would look. Does that make sense? It's just, I know I sound ridiculously like that's crazy, Rachel, of course, but we don't always do that. We're not always that logical. Great, then I think this is going to match with your seminar earlier. How many non-Christians know a Christian? 53% of the non-Christians in this country say that they know someone who's a practicing Christian. It's a good start, but this is an alarm bell. Doop, 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 doop. In 2015, it was 68%. The pandemic has shrunk everybody's worlds, including the practicing Christian world. So it was 68% in 2015. So we didn't have a let's go make friends or inhabit new spaces strategy as part of our Talking Jesus strategy. With this drop, we have to have inhabit new spaces, take up a new hobby, go find somebody. We have to have that as part of our strategy because we've lost our reach. And I think it's the pandemic. We're not mixing. As a culture and as a population, we aren't mixing enough. And so people don't know us. So that is a big alarm. How do they know us when they know us? They know us well with their family and friends. Church leaders, we're doing our best there at 2%, but we're never going to reach a nation, people. So if you want a slide to convince everybody in your church that the job of mission and evangelism is for them, this is a good one. We've got a 2% reach, and we'll never get there, but we will get there if everyone talks to their friends and family. So it's obvious where the onus has to be for mission and evangelism. Great. Talk to the person next to you. What are the top 3 traits of Christians as voted on by the UK population? Okay, are you ready? Big reveal. We are friendly, caring, and good-humoured. Woo! Beat that, people. We are not narrow-minded, hypocritical, homophobic. Now, just talking about that earpiece that we had in earlier, about the resurrection, when you watch a soap opera, what do we come out as? Do we come out as friendly, caring, and good-humoured? No, interesting that. Who's in control? Can you see why that piece is so damaging to our confidence. This slide I've seen change rooms more than any other because people go, it's okay to say that I'm a Christian. People are going to still like me. Yes. It's crazy, isn't it? Yeah, they're still going to like you. They're still going to think you're the friendly, caring, good human person. In fact, this can give real confidence to people. Get out there, talk to your friends, they like you. They're not going to stop liking you. They know you're a Christian and they still like you. They're not so keen on the church. That is where we've got a problem. So the word church doesn't come out so positively. That would be very similar to if you said to somebody, what about your local MP? Oh, amazing. What about politicians? Oh, dreadful. Do you see? So actually that's again why we need to do, the work needs to be in the personal spaces and places because we have a positive, that's where we have a positive reputation. And then new for 2022, we asked what questions were people asking? And you might say, Rachel, at 22%, none of the above, we were certainly missing people. We were missing the older generations. We worked with Alpha, Kingsgate Church, Lewis Palau Organisation, EAS and CV Global. We all chipped in to make this research possible. And we got the questions from Alpha, and they resonated with the younger generations. Strangely enough, people over 65 were just not asking, what's the purpose to my life? Or what should I do with my life? They just weren't the question that they were looking for. So, that's interesting. Will everything be okay? Massively, lots of people asking that. We're in that season, and we need to be answering that question for people. Will everything be okay? Yes, because God's in charge. I know it's really wobbly, but we have confidence and security because of Jesus. So we've got something to offer. And what happens when you die? That resonated right across the generations. Nobody's got any answers anymore. No one's giving any answers. No one's even talking about death. And no one's talking about resurrection. That's why I'm so convinced we've really got to get back to Easter. Because people don't know what happens when they die, and they really want to know, and they want someone to talk to about it. They've got a vague hope of some kind of resurrected Jesus figure, but they don't know what that means for them. And we have got to refine our boldness on it. We've got the biggest and most extraordinary offer ever. And we're so polite that we're not sure if we should bring it up. So if we could try to bring it up. So that's something I really think Easter, very important. Okay, we have conversations with people? So 55% of the non-Christians who knew a Christian had had a conversation with that Christian, which is a good start, isn't it? So we've done some of the talking, but there's still a whole chunk of people who haven't had a conversation. So we need to work on that and get everybody talking. We asked the Christians, and remember these are our active practicing Bible readers and prayers, what was happening and did they feel confident? They felt it was every Christian's responsibility to share their faith. They felt that they could do this. They were comfortable to do this. But they don't always talk because they didn't always feel they had the answers. This was the younger generation in particular. So if the 18 to 24-year-olds, they actually were they're the people who were talking the most. I haven't got all of that data for you here, but you can find it. They're the people having the most conversations, but most worried about the hard questions. They're facing more difficult questions than the rest of us. And we need to equip people, not dodge the issues. We need to be clear about the issues, and someone's got to do the apologetic work on the really difficult topics so that our younger generations have got really good answers and a way through. And then this one, which will really, I don't feel I know any non-Christians well enough to talk to them about Jesus. So I'm confident to do it, I just don't know any. And that goes back to that 53%, that reach and inhabiting new spaces. And so there's a real call for us to inhabit new spaces. What happens when we have a conversation? How do the non-Christians feel? 75% said they felt comfortable in the conversation. So we're not off-putting, we're not doing it badly. Only 22% felt they were missing out on our faith. But 36% were open to an experience or encounter with Jesus Christ. Well, that's exciting. That's non-Christians right now who've had a conversation with a Christian who are open to an encounter or experience with Jesus. I've got other slides about the people who actually did become a Christian after those conversations, kind of you need both sides. But that is staggering because I can guarantee to you right now that there are people in the UK population who wish to experience or encounter Jesus for themselves. Let's go find them. Should make the job an awful lot easier, shouldn't it? And it's similar to, look at this, I wanted to know more about Jesus, 33%. Do you know that's about 1 in 3 which is really exciting, of people who want to know more about Jesus, having had a conversation with one of us. That is staggeringly good news for the church. No, it's not everybody. Not everybody, even when the Apostle Paul or even Jesus himself was here, followed him. But there's 1 in 3. And you know, in 2015, it was 1 in 5. Look what the pandemic has done. That is why we are so committed to mission now. I know we're tired. I know as church leaders, we're all like, we've been through a lot with everybody else, but it's because we've all been through that people are so open. And if we wait till we all feel sorted, they'll feel sorted and the door will have closed. Does that make sense? The missional moment is now. So we can't wait till we've got all our ducks in a row and we're feeling better. We actually have to push on the door whilst the door's open, because otherwise it won't be there. So it is a really important moment, but I am so excited because I can tell you right now that there are people who want to know about Jesus and all want to experience or encounter him for themselves in the UK population. We just have to go find them. And that's not going to be that difficult because they're looking for us. And actually, they're already in touch with one of us because these are all the people who are in touch with us. So this should not be an impossible task for us. And there's more than 2015, which is so exciting. I'm going to miss that one. And finally, in the last few seconds, I'm going to come into land with how people come to faith, because it's a really important question. We have got how people come to faith. When you're asking a poll of 1,000 Christians, you may as well ask them how they came to faith, because it might give you some helpful clues as to how other people might come to faith. That's how I felt. Anyway, so we thought of everything on this, so you're going to have to sort of stare at the long list. Growing up in a Christian family at 34%. Oh, look at number 2. You might think I'm the most crazy saleswoman on earth. I'm only because I'm utterly convinced. I'm utterly convinced that this can change people's lives. So we have to get it into their hands. We have to say to people, look, this is my whole life is based on this. Everything about how I am, what I do, who I am, is based on the person in this book. Would you please read it and let me know what you think? If one of your friends said that to you, whoever the book was about, wouldn't you read it just to find out? It's quite an easy offer, really. You'd read it because you'd want to find out because they're your friend. Then you've got physical church services. Anything to do with those, anybody? Always remembering that on a Sunday, people could be in your church who don't yet know Jesus. And actually remembering to give people the opportunity to follow Jesus or find out more or know how to do that. Sunday school. A spiritual experience, conversations, yay, with a Christian that you knew, a particular life event, whether positive or negative. Hold on to that one because we're going to come back to that. Responding to the gospel at a Christian event, attending a church school, visiting and praying in an open church building. Who'd have thought that would come out so high? But it's amazing, getting those open and making sure, there might be some gospels in them. We could do that in every possible church building in the country. That'd be a cracking mission strategy. Youth club, Christian printed media. So we do other things. We do booklets and other things that people find easy to read. Attending online church. Look at how big that is, considering we've not been doing it for very long. So it's having a big impact, and we need to stay there. Introductory course like Alpha, Christianity Explored, Christian content on social media. So it's another great space for us all. Church weddings, funerals, Christian union, Christian media, Christian content, university, blah, 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 new forms of message church, other. So I got most of them. Then, this is an important slide with that. What age do people come to faith? This tells us something about our resources. Most people make up their mind about how they're going to live their life by about the age of 25. It's just how human beings are wired. The really exciting news, though, is that people of all ages are coming to faith. And I could tell from the data that a lot of that is quite new growth. Does that make sense? So there's 2 things in here. A lot of people come to faith by the age of 25, and we need to understand that. But people of all ages can and do come to faith. So you need both of those pieces in your equation. But often people they get in a trajectory by the age of 25, and then they stay in it. I want to do 2 things from this. Let me go here next. So I finished writing the report, and you can get a copy. You can download it and read it all. I finished writing the report, went to sleep, and you know how it is at 5 o'clock in the morning, and you wake up and you go, oh, bother. I forgot to break that by age to find out how adults come to faith. Oh, no, that's the next one. We'll come back to that one. This is how adults come to faith. 23% are life events. What's the pandemic? What's a war in Ukraine? What's an economic crisis? As well as giving birth to a baby, as well as somebody dying, as well as moving house or changing job or being made redundant. This is the biggest factor in, so people get set in their way by 25. The biggest thing that knocks them off so that they begin to think about faith is a life event. The pandemic has changed hard ground to soft ground. And even the economic crisis means that we have a massive opportunity because it's a life event. And that is why that's so important. And then Christian family, church service is a spiritual experience, creating space for people to experience God. Reading the Bible. Conversations with Christians you knew well. Responding to the gospel is still really key. Giving people a chance to make a decision to follow Jesus. We need to do that. We've got out of the habit. Christian printed media. I really enjoyed sharing these stats with one of my friends' small church. I did a sermon there. They all got so excited. They said, right, let's do something. So they ran a women's afternoon tea. We're talking old school here. It was delightful. We had an afternoon tea for women. We had cakes. It was called When Life Gives You Lemons. And I came back to do an evangelistic talk. And all their friends came. And they were astounded that their friends came. But they'd believed the data. Because they wouldn't have done it otherwise. They got totally out of the habit of doing things like a classic event. And we had amazing response from the women. I ran out of Gospels to give to these people to read. I just hadn't taken enough, O me of little faith. It was so exciting. We've just got to start again. We've just got to get doing this. We've just forgotten. And it's because we've had the wrong earpiece in and we think no one's interested. There's piles of people out there. The harvest is plentiful. It really, really is, and it has never been as plentiful as it is now, and we so desperately need to get out there. I just want to tell you one other, quick stat. This is from our Talking Toddler research. You can look that up. 74% of all of the parents with children under the age of 5 are in touch with what organisation? The church! So we could reach a generation, and we could reach almost every under 5 in the nation. They come along to things like toddler groups. They came to help their children because they had a life event they gave birth. They want to help their children with spiritual things. We give them a custard cream. We need to give them Jesus. And there's cracking research that says they come to church toddler groups because they want to help their children find out about Jesus. So with the lovely Happy Land, we're doing a whole curriculum for toddlers as well. And we have a toddler group webinar. We've loads of stuff that I haven't got time for. We've got an Oikos app. We'd love every street in the UK to be prayed for the year of mission. You can do that as a region, and then you can make sure that every street in your area is covered. We'll make sure that the gospel goes out during the coronation. We're going to produce a Matthew's gospel that can be given out in coronation events so people can read the life of the King of Kings. That's that one. Hope Spaces is about taking over empty shops so that you can have places of spiritual experience on the high street. And if people want to find out more about the research, it is all on the Talking Jesus website. You can download the website, and there is a 6-week great filmed course that you can run in your church.
Round of applause, please, people. Rachel could have spoken for a lot longer and given us even more encouraging information, which is, it's just so exciting. But please make sure you go to Talking Jesus, because so much of their information and resources is all on there. But we wanted to give a bit of space and opportunity for questions, because it's always good to hear from you who are living it out and wanting to share Jesus in your context, in your places. So, open floor for questions, and I will... Rachel, you'll answer and I'll run around. Because, that'd be great. Okay, over to you, floor. That's wonderful.
Is there any data on when it comes to evangelism and the growth and people coming to faith, is there a massive disparity between women coming to faith and men coming to faith?
Good question. I have looked at gender. I haven't broken. What I'd like to break, and I'm just being honest here, I'd quite like to break the one about whether they want to know about Jesus or whether they want to experience Jesus. That would be worth breaking. But in practicing Christians, there isn't actually we're not megally out of kilter. So that's quite important to us. And on those who have, and because so much of the growth of people coming to faith is under the age of 18, again, I don't think it's showing quite as big. I could break the adults to check. So I haven't done it, but I do need to do it. Excellent. I'll break out gender and let you know.
Well done, Ali. Good question. Other questions on the floor?
So those questions were really interesting. So they were prompted questions, weren't they, in terms of where is the purpose for my life and things like that. Did you have an option for people to put in their own question at all?
No, just because of the way we were doing it. So it would be a dream if we had lots of money to do an open-ended qualitative survey, but we kind of looked at it and we're like, you need quite a lot of money to do that and then monitor it. So we didn't do it.
But I mean, there's a preaching sermon series right there, isn't there?
There is.
Those questions.
Yeah, even on those questions. They're great questions, and to equip everybody for those questions would be amazing.
Yeah, Jenny?
Is there any information within that on what types of church people are becoming Christians within or who are going out? Like, is there a particular aspect of church life that attracts people?
No, I mean, the thing is, so if you're a non-Christian, you probably don't know it till you get through the door. But the only thing I can tell you is that the people where they know that their friend is a practicing Christian. So that's where those conversations are happening and where they're positive, because it's individual to individual, not church to individual. So a lot of this is me and a friend, and that what the non-Christian knows is that person is an active and practicing Christian. We had to let them define it. We put a hint. They might go to church regularly, but that person therefore has probably said something and has probably come from a place of confidence to say that they're a Christian, so that the non-Christian knows they're a Christian. And that's all I can tell you. But we can divide like how many practicing Christians there are per different denomination, but because the segment is small, you can't see. But so this would include right the way across the spectrum from Pentecostal to Roman Catholics. Some of them would fall into that practicing Christian category from our data.
Right. I'll ask a question then. The 1 in 5 down to 1 in 3, and you were saying the people being open to talking about Jesus. And you're saying the pandemic has obviously helped with all of that. Have you got any other understanding of why that is? Because that's quite a big change, isn't it, really?
It's massive.
It's massive, isn't it? Any other sort of ideas of understanding why that is changed?
I genuinely think it is. It was such a huge life event. So when I broke out, so to start with, I wasn't sure. And then when I broke out the life event stat for adults, everyone we're talking about in this research is an adult. So we're talking about non-Christians who are aged 18 and above in the actual research. So when you realise that a life event is the biggest influence on bringing people to faith, you can see why the scale of the pandemic is so enormous in, if you like, creating an openness for us for mission. So I think it's just there. It's in the scale of the size of everyone going through a life event that's actually turned up statistically. Yeah. And I've got no idea if we do this in 5 years' time, if it will have dropped back down, because life may have got stable by then. Which is why we're so committed to Hope 23-24 now, because we really feel that now is the moment. Even Easter 24 feels a bit of a long way away, but it's just to get everybody lined up so that we could do something really noisy together.
Yeah, because it's that one stat that's dramatically changed my attitude to anyone I meet, almost.
Yes.
That literally, if 1 in 3 people are open to having a conversation, that means most people I'm meeting on a random basis might be well interested in having a conversation about Jesus.
It is massive.
Yeah.
Hello. Really great research. Thank you so much for sharing it. Are there plans to do this on an ongoing basis going forwards?
Yeah, so we did it 2015. We were going to do 2020, and we hope that we can keep doing it at least every 5 years. We've also got, I looked at doing it like doing other countries because different people have got wind of it. But again, it's just the bill is too big at the moment for us to do it globally. But if we can find a global funder, people would love to be able to look at what's happening in other countries as well. But we as a UK, we're really committed that we will work as hard as we can to raise the funds to do it again in 5 years' time. And we had quite a big partnership, which was helpful for that, because if you've got a 6-way split, put chipping money in, that was really helpful.
What sort of figures are we talking, Rachel? Because I have
massive.
no idea.
For this, I think, in the end, we only paid about, 15, 16 grand, because we used to be about 30 grand, but because I had a friend who'd analysed it, we paid her less than that, less than the extra money, and I wrote the report. Saves a lot of money. So that's why, in the end, it wasn't that big. And therefore, we know we can do it again in 5 years' time because it wasn't huge. So again, it's finding your friends. So there's a really good data whiz. She's now in Oxford Diocese, and she was so helpful. And she loves it. So that was really helpful to have her on side. So she's my actual data queen, as opposed to me. Just to say, so I'm Hope Together. We have like a monthly little mailing that goes out if you want to find. Everything we do is based out of our research. Everything that we're creating or thinking about comes out of a research evidence base for mission evangelism. So if you're interested, we have like a monthly e-news that will help you to tell you what's happening, particularly around as we warm up to Hope 23-24, so that you don't miss where you are on what's coming out. You don't have to read it every month, but at least you've then got the option. And you can find all of our stuff. We've done a wellbeing course that works really well in the communities around, the Will Everything Be Okay resonance. This it's further out than Alpha. So it doesn't start with Jesus. It starts with people's well-being. But what we've often found in a community is that works really well. And then you can bring, do you know what I mean? That group might then want to go onto a journey to look at more deeper spiritual things. So we filmed it in the pandemic, so we managed to get Simon Thomas and Joanna Adienka, because they weren't doing Sky Sports or CBBS, so that was quite handy. So that's out there. And then if you have a look, the Talking Toddler stuff is there, the Mark and Luke's Gospels are there, and the postcards, and again, more stuff on the Oikos app. And anybody who wants a brochure on 23-24. So this is really a unity movement across all the denominations to try to get us to do mission together. And if you do one thing, the big thing is, can we make Easter 2024 really loud? What could we do together that means that people really notice the resurrection of Jesus in Easter 2024? And I think we've got time to line up for that. So I'll try and stay connected to somebody on that thinking.
We've been looking at church growth and multiplication. If you and your family were church planting, obviously there's a whole range of opportunities, young people, toddlers, apologetics to various ones, live events. What would be the first thing that you would implement missionally if you're church planting now? Yeah.
This is, and I mean, people are smart, but if I had one shot, I'd shoot at this one. I would shoot at the under 5s if I had one shot. Why? Because we've got 74% reach of the 25 or 26% of whom we're not in touch with. A third of them want an invite. That's almost, it's so off the scale of the number of people in that age bracket. The under 5s aren't making the choice, their parents are. But that is so off the scale that if we all made those groups and we led those people to Jesus, and they come to us, it's not really a huge effort. Do you know what I mean? It's not like, it's a bit like the books, the Bible's in the porch. It's not a massive effort. And I know some people are like, but the toddler, we run a toddler group network now online called Talking Toddlers. We do a termly webinar, and it's about making them as missional as possible. And some of them cry because no one's ever thanked them for running the toddler group for 25 years in their church. No one's ever said thank you because they're the forgotten bit, because they're not important. And I think they might be the missional frontier. And you might say, oh, Rachel, but I'm not really good with under 5s. Well, find the people who are. Because if every under 5 had a genuinely life-transforming experience of Jesus, we would not be having this conversation in 20 years' time. If every under 5 in the country, and we've got the opportunity to do it. We're in touch with almost every under 5. We're in touch with almost one whole generation. So if we could impact that generation and they could all have not a custard cream, but a living experience of Jesus, that I won't be here in 20 years' time. We won't be standing here trying to work out how to do church planting and multiplication because they will have experienced Jesus. Now, what might happen after that, but then when we go back out there, they will remember. Because in those really early years, we're learning so much more, aren't we, as a society, about what happens in those early years and the formation that's done. And so we need to do spiritual formation where people meet Jesus. So I know it might sound like the craziest thing, but if there was one thing I could do, it would be working with those under fives and their families, and then you can grow up with them. So you can take them from under 5, and if you can work out what's next, you can keep them from 5 to 10. If you then really work hard at 10 to 14, before you know it, you've actually got, do you see, you've got a church. But for the people under 5, and you've got to work hard at what does that look like? How do I make this church? And be unashamed. And if a few of those toddler people leave, that's not the end of the world. Because actually what you're trying to do is get yourself a real core group that will go for it and be discipled. So that is actually, if I had one shot, that would be my one shot, looking at the data.
Great. Other questions? Anyone else want to ask a question? I know that actually, Rachel, do you have to disappear off quickly?
No, I'll be around for a little bit.
No, yeah, and I know that actually asking a question in this context is a bit,
Yeah.
But actually Rachel's going to be here so you can come and talk to her and obviously get some of the information. Although a lot of it is all online.
Yeah, a lot of it's all online. So just do go. And you can have the PowerPoint is online. So
Yeah.
I can't go everywhere. So take the PowerPoint. You are all great presenters. Go release. Do you see what I mean? You go tell people that there's 1 in 3.
Yeah.
Because I can't. So honestly, take the PowerPoint, use it wherever you want to. It does not have to be me. It doesn't have to be me. That's really important. And the course is beautifully filmed, the Talking Jesus course, and that's online. It's 6 weeks, and it will get people talking about their faith and have the confidence and go through some of this. So that's a really easy win. But take the PowerPoint, do whatever you want with it, because we want this as far and wide as possible.
Yeah, well, that's brilliant. So last chance. Anyone want to ask anything else? Okay, great. Can we just give another round of applause to Rachel, please? Because I'm a pastor, can I just pray as well to finish? And we'll just, Lord, we just thank you for this time together. We thank you that you, as ever, continue to be good news. And Lord, help each and every one of us to continue to look to share you, Jesus, with others. And to share and encourage those that we can influence as well to say, it is okay, it is good to share about you, Jesus, with others. They're not going to bite our heads off. So, Lord, we pray for everyone here, pray for those that we can all influence as well, that you, Lord, would encourage us to be bold to step out for you and to share you, Jesus. And, Lord, we pray for Rachel as well. Continue to bless her and all that she is called to do in following you and talking about you to many different people and spaces and places. Lord, bless her and all those that are involved. In Jesus' name we pray. Amen. Wonderful. Thank you. Dinner is served, is it? I don't know. I'm not sure. But please come and talk to Rachel as well.